And we're here to talk about the ATXGO project, also our survey for the parks. And I wanted to introduce myself and some of the other folks who are going to be doing this with us. My name is Susan Slattery. I'm the Director of Outreach for ArtSpark. And one of our guests this evening is our Board of Directors President, Emily Shyrock. Welcome, Emily. And we also have our Executive Director, Celia Hughes, our ATXGO Project Coordinator, Gina Woodruff, and our Speaking Advocates Coordinator, Boy Nagel. And then members of the Speaking Advocates, which Boy will introduce folks as we get to that. Our website is artsparktx.org, and that our social handle on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok is ArtSparkTX. So if you want to give us a follow, and you can also go to our website and sign up on our newsletter. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Celia, who's going to tell you a little bit about the project and Access Guide. Thank you.
I'm Celia, and I'm the Executive Director of ArtSpark Texas, and delighted to be here. We have been working with the parks now for a long time. We partnered with Texas Parks and Wildlife about 10 years ago when they were still doing their Wildlife Expo, which was 2 jam-packed days on a weekend. I think in the fall, I can't remember when it was, but they decided that they really needed to make an effort to become accessible. And so that we worked with them and set up an access booth and trained people in audio description. And we worked on making all of the signage accessible. And we trained volunteers. And so when someone with a disability came to the expo, they were directed to the access booth where they could get a sighted guide or just someone to go with them. Those 2 days were all about introducing people to recreation and things that they could do in the state parks. And so it was quite, they had canoeing in a tank, and they had lots of arts and crafts that we got involved with for kids. But we did that for about 5 years, and then unfortunately the directorship at the Parks and Wildlife changed, and there was, I think this must have been, there was a huge we had a little bit of a recession here, and money was tight, and so they stopped doing the Parks and Wildlife and the Wildlife Expo. And what they did was then begin to try to make sure that all of the parks around the state were really focused on accessibility, and they put all of their effort into getting rangers and interpreters trained and really trying to make the parks more accessible, which is they've been doing successfully on some level. A lot of parks have at least an accessible trail, doing a lot with their signage. So we have a nice relationship with Texas Parks and Wildlife. We also worked with the state parks organization 1 year, and we did arts in 5 or 6 of the state parks. We taught singing lessons in one of the parks. We did paper making, where they gathered up leaves and wood and bark and stuff like that and made it into paper and printed on that. So our relationship with the parks has been very nice. And we also know that a lot of people with disabilities don't go to the parks very much, and there's a number of reasons, and we'll talk about that today a little bit. So we were able to get a grant from the St. David's Foundation to add to our ATXGO website a searchable database for the parks in Travis, Caldwell, and Bastrop counties. And so Gina's been working on that, creating this database, and so that if a person or a family wants to go to a park, they can look it up and see right up front, is there parking? Do they have accessible bathrooms? Is it even worth my while to go to this park, or should I choose another park? So that's what tonight is about. Tonight is about to hear hear from some folks and get from y'all what you think what's important to you about a park, why you go, why you don't go, so that we can make this website as robust as possible for these three counties, and then hopefully eventually expand it to at least the other state parks across the state. So that's it in a nutshell as to what we're doing. We did a presentation at one of the national parks or state parks conferences, and we put together a video and a bunch of our speaking advocates at the time. We interviewed them, and they talked about what they enjoyed about parks and what they dreamed for a park of the future. And so I'd like to hear a little bit from you tonight, as what is your dream for a park of the future? What would an accessible, welcoming park look like for you? So I think if I'll happy to take questions after everyone speaks, or give you any more information about what the project is. We will be looking for people to go to the parks and report back on access. That's one of the things that Emily is going to be doing tonight. So, we have over 200 parks, right? I think that's right. 200 parks that are on the database. And so we want to make sure that the information that we put up there is correct. So we're going to be asking for some volunteers or people, some park ambassadors to go out and check out some things for us. So we'll be talking a little bit about that at the very end.
Okay.
Great. I think, Boy, you're up next there.
So I'm Miss Boy, and I coordinate the speaking advocates group, and we have members who come and write about topics that might apply to us as people with disabilities, and how we would share them with other people in a way that would allow us to practice being advocates for people with disabilities, or advocates for ourselves, and so that our stories are heard. And we have two members of speaking advocates, one of whom is also a member of Tilt performance group, that I'm also involved in. So that's Kristen is here with us. And hi, Kristen.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome. I'm glad you're going to come share with us. And then invisible to us, but real in person, is Darla, who's here on the phone. Hi, Darla.
Hello, everybody.
Great. So, and then Emily, are you going to be on our panel too? Yes.
I'll let the panelists take it away, because it sounds like they've done some thought and preparation, and I only prepared to talk about my park experience.
Okay. All right. So we looked at 4 general questions around going to parks, and the first question that we came up with, that actually Gina came up with, Gina was very good and came up with it, because she's good at stuff like that, is how would you describe a park? Like, what's a park to you? And what makes something, the difference between like a park and a piece of grass on the corner, on the corner of your street? So who wants to go first on this one?
Can
or
I
I'll
go
pick
first?
some. Yes, please go first, Darla.
Okay. My recreational therapist and I go to parks all the time. I only see her on Mondays, but when the pandemic, before the pandemic happened, we used to go to parks all the time. The one thing that I noticed with parks is a park is something that makes you relax. Like you can go to a park and be totally relaxed with what you're doing, how your day is going, everything. Because with me, that's what I need. Something that makes my mind, makes my stress go away. Especially when I hear like the birds and all of that. So I love it.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that a piece across it needs to have things like trees and birds and wildlife and stuff to become a park for you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
Kristen. Thanks, Darla.
I think, well, a park is definitely nature. It's outdoors, trees, trails. Sometimes if it has a lake, that would be ideal for me. I love water sports. So that's pretty much my definition of a park, is a piece of nature where you can go and connect.
Okay. And can we stay on you for a minute instead of jumping back and forth, and then I'll come back to Darla.
Sure.
Why do you visit parks? I mean, like, what's your motivation for visiting a park?
I like being outdoors and being involved in the community. I love water sports, especially kayaking. I like to do that in the spring and the summer here in Austin. It's good exercise. I don't think of it as recreational therapy, but it can easily for someone else be considered that. You can go and socialize and get a workout in and just be in nature.
Do you go to events in parks?
Sometimes. I'm always worried about the accessibility, how easy can I get around in my wheelchair? I'm always worried, like, how much gravel to try to get my chair through, because if you get gravel, or if you get your front wheels of the chair in too much gravel, or sometimes you could even like hit a stick that you don't see on the ground and flip your chair forward. But I would love to go see a concert in a park if there's a concert going on there, or there's a park here in Austin that sometimes will do Shakespeare plays for free, and I love to be a part of that.
And when you go to events, do they ever have like designated wheelchair places and at concerts and shows?
They do. It's usually really crowded though, and like I said, sometimes it's hard to get around. We're talking specifically about Austin, right?
Yeah, right now.
Yeah. They do, but still you have to get there early because it's very limited.
Okay. So Darla, why do you said some of like to relax? Why else do you like to go to parks and and do you ever go to events in parks?
Well, for me, I go to a park because of the trails. I like plants, but my thing is that at least when I go to a park anyway, I like plants. But my thing with plants or the park is that I need to be on a solid surface. So I do think, to do my chair, I do think sometimes it's a little bumpy for me to follow the trails. So I'm just thinking if we had more like sidewalks in some of the parks. I don't know if you guys can put that in, but like that's just me. I like hearing the water whenever I go to some of the parks here in Austin. And believe it or not, I'm very close to nature. I like going in the backyard for now. But yeah, I like seeing plants and all the extra stuff, and I like sitting at the picnic table and just relaxing.
Okay. Have you ever been to a large church event or concert at a park? And how was that?
That was a long time ago, but I enjoyed it, yeah.
Okay.
But I think we need to have more of those outdoor concerts, or making organizations to where it's not like minimal parking spaces for people with disabilities to be around the park, though. That's my biggest thing. And to be like to not have enough parking spaces to go to the park in the first place is really, really a good way to allow people with disabilities to be shut out of things in general at the park. So I would have to say more parking spaces would be a good deal, and sidewalks with ramps would help too.
Right. Well, those are things you look for when you're trying to find out whether you're going to go to a park or not, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, somebody asked me today if I'd ever been to Barton Springs, and I actually have never been to Barton Springs. And part of the reason is that Sally would not be able to walk from the parking to the pool because of the distance. And it was like, so I've just got in my head now that it's inaccessible, but that just may be a story for her that it's changed now. But that I realized that was accessibility was the main reason I hadn't gone, which is ridiculous. And Darla, when you say sidewalks or at least flat surfaces, right? Something to go on a trail where you're not going to be bumped from left or right or risk, like Christian said, your wheels going into sand or gravel. But what about, do you consider, like we live in Austin, Texas, what about shade and trees? Does that make a difference to whether you want
to? Yeah, but the thing with me is, for the sidewalk thing that I mentioned, I don't want to get a flat tire from moving my chair around. And and shade trees and stuff like that, I think we should have more of those. And the little resting areas that you have, like with the tops over them, those are good. I've been to some parks with those. But yeah, I'm pretty much in the shade the whole time I go with Lauren.
Hey, Kristen, I know that wheelchairs really can get very, very hot, right? In the summer in Austin. Most wheelchairs are black, and it's absorbs the heat, and can be dangerous. When you've gone to parks, have you found like accessible barbecues or picnic areas and places like that? And is that something that would encourage you to go if you knew there were those things there?
Sure. As long as I could get to the tables easily, like a ramp or, minimal gravel. But also, I'm really glad you asked me that, Boy, because what I've noticed sometimes is the picnic tables, how they have the seats attached to them a lot of the time? That doesn't always work when you're in a chair. So if there was like maybe a section of the table with like a seat missing, that way someone who uses the chair can pull up underneath the picnic table easier.
So if you were coming to Austin for the first time, Kristen, and you were looking for a guide and you wanted to pick a park to go to, what were the things you'd look for on that guide? How would you use that guide? What would be important?
As far as accessibility or just
Yeah.
what the park had to offer?
Oh, so that, well, it doesn't matter what it's got to offer if you can't get in there.
Okay, exactly. Disabled parking. Are there accessible restrooms?
Mm,
Yeah,
Um,
that's my biggest thing too, is the restrooms.
right. Thanks,
it
Ella.
might be hard to be able to tell this on a map if you've never been to Austin, but I would want to know about the terrain. What, I hate to keep saying this, but minimal gravel. Um, how steep of an incline are the hills?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um,
And and
Hang
then
on a
and
minute, Ella.
and
huh?
like I said, maybe a few accessible picnic tables would be nice too.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was an event going on, do they have ADA seating? What's the policy on that? That's also
Right.
something I would want to know.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you said that about hills and terrain, because I know that not everybody uses an electric wheelchair, and
Mhm.
so you're going uphill. That makes a difference to know how much of a slope it is. It makes a difference whether it's accessible to you by yourself or not.
Or do I need to bring a pair of gloves? Because is it going to
Yeah.
destroy my hands,
Mm-hmm.
getting up and down those hills?
Right. Or yeah, the down. Yeah. It's
Mhm.
not just up.
I think
Yeah.
that Kristen makes an excellent point, because my chair is half electric, and my chair is half, you can roll it by yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't have that access to go and be in the sand without my electrical parts. So I just basically have to stay on the sidewalk,
Right.
which is not really fair to me. And concerning those picnic tables, yeah, I have to use my take my footrest off in order to fit underneath the tables, or turn to the side to be able to fit underneath the tables. I think that does need to change. And concerning the barbecue pit,
Mm-hmm.
everybody likes a barbecue. Everybody likes a barbecue pit. So I think that if we had maybe like lower barbecue pits, then even the disabled can use. You don't want to limit a park to only non-disabled people, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know that around the country, I think it was a couple of times I stayed in state parks or BLM land, and there were accessible camping areas that did have, I noticed that the barbecues were lower. Like, so that's not something that's impossible to do, for sure. We've covered everything on our questions here. Do any of you have a story about being at a park where you had a situation, or you had a funny or scary situation that was about accessibility? Or is there any parks in Austin that you wish you could have gone but haven't gone to?
Well, Lauren and I, we go to parks every time we go, I always get scared, like if we're up on a hill or something like that.
Mhm.
So I always tell her to turn me around backwards to go down the hill. So that's why I'm so intent on the sidewalk. If you notice, I keep bringing it back to sidewalks and bringing it back to everything.
Mhm.
It's just because of everything that I've experienced with the park. It's not only about relaxation, it's about whether or not that person in a wheelchair is able to get around, and not limit a person in a wheelchair to just one thing that they can do at a park. It's about getting around while
Right.
in the park.
Yeah, I
You know
mean,
what I mean?
that's one thing about being able to have accessible parking. You get in the park and then you have to sit by the tree while everybody else is running, having fun.
Yeah.
That odd situation. To me, that's not accessible. Kristen, do you have any weird situations that's happened for you in parks? I didn't ask you to plan this, so this is kind of off the top of your head.
I'm trying to think. I don't know of necessarily any like funny stories or anything like that. I've just known that there are certain parks that I've gone to in the past and I've had fun at, but there's no way I could have done it without having an able-bodied person there. I think when I was in high school, I went on a camping trip to a park in Bastrop, and it was a lot of fun, and I managed because I was in high school. It was with my high school youth group. Every single high school guy could pick me up. So that's kind of how I managed, is I had to get my guy friends to carry me from point A to point B. Like if I wanted to go in the lake, I had to get one of my guy friends to carry me down to the lake, and they were usually pretty nice about it, and it gave them a chance to I don't know, show off their muscles or something. But other than that, I can't really think of any weird or funny story. It's just a matter of there's no way I could have done it completely independently.
Well, I had quite a vision of you fluttering your eyelashes to get into the lake, and like it was quite an opportunity for you as a teenage girl to.
Yes, I used to always say,
faint.
"Oh, it's a blessing and a curse. Every guy here can pick me up."
Yeah.
Whether I want to be picked up or not, they could do it.
That's what I was thinking. Did you want to be picked?
Yeah, it depends which one it is.
Yeah,
the one
or
that
how
didn't
cute he was.
Right, or the one that didn't bring his deodorant with him. He's probably, not so much. Okay, so that's our time for the panel. Thank you so much for. Please stay on. Obviously, there might be more questions, but appreciate what you had to say, and it's totally perfect for what we wanted. Thank you.
All right, thanks for having me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and so now we're going to hear from Emily Shyrock about your adventure with the wheelchair, I guess it was the Grit wheelchair rental at McKinney Falls.
Alrighty. Well, it was funny because I had seen a Facebook post that Texas Parks and Wildlife had gotten a grant to purchase 5 Grit wheelchairs, which is an all-terrain wheelchair, at 5 state parks across Texas. So I had already been planning to go and check it out, and then Celia reached out to me and said, "Hey, we've got a project. Would you mind going to McKinney Falls and checking out the Grit wheelchair?" So it just seemed like a perfect fit and a good motivation to get out there. So it is a relatively new kind of feature to the parks. As I said, there's 5 state parks. When I saw that post on Facebook, I went onto the Texas Parks and Wildlife website and was looking at the different state parks. And I couldn't find any information on their website about it. It doesn't seem like it's something that they're advertising, and that could just be because it is relatively new. So I reached out to just the general email address and said, "Hey, I saw that you have these. What's the process to use them?" And they said that I was going to be the first person to check it out. So I think there's still some work to be done there as far as advertising it and figuring out what the reservation process is for something that is fairly specialized for a small population. I don't know if they're going to have an official registration system. I just emailed and said, "I'm planning to come at this day and this time." When I arrived, they had the chair out waiting for me to buy. So one thing to note with a wheelchair like that is that for folks who are full-time wheelchair users, our wheelchairs are usually customized for our bodies and our abilities. So specialized cushions or backrest, or maximizing the function and ability that we have. And so when you use a kind of more generic wheelchair, whether that's a sport wheelchair or an all-terrain wheelchair, it's not necessarily going to have those same individualized features. So that's just something to consider, when you're going, is your own health and safety and ability, knowing you're using a chair with a different cushion and a different, center of gravity. All that's going to be a little bit different, something to get used to. The grit wheelchair is all-terrain, so it's set up differently than any chair I'd ever used before, where instead of moving it by pushing on the wheels, it has levers that you push back and forth. So the motion it felt more like rowing rather than pushing a wheelchair. So within the first couple minutes of using it, I could already tell I was using muscles that I don't normally use on a daily basis. So it definitely is a workout in a whole new way. Texas Parks and Wildlife did have a kind of introduction video, so that was helpful to watch before you go, just so you can kind of understand some of that. But once you're actually sitting in it, it's a completely different experience, because my body has been so trained for years to push a manual wheelchair that all of a sudden now to switch that up was different. The grit wheelchair doesn't go backwards, so in order to turn around, you just push in a circle, which means that you have to leave enough space for that. So there were a few times where I got like stuck at a tree because I got too close to it and I didn't have space to turn around. So it was definitely helpful to go with an able-bodied friend to kind of help get out of those situations as you're learning a new rope, learning the ropes. It's definitely not something that would work inside. Of course, as an all-terrain wheelchair, it's not designed to take inside, but like to try to take it into the visitor centers or the bathrooms, that would probably not end well, because you're not going to have enough space to be able to do a 360 or 180 to be able to turn around. So the goal of it is that it allows you to move kind of off paved sidewalks and go places that you might not be able to go in your typical manual chair. Instead of having two small casters on the front, it has one center bar with one larger wheel. So it provides a more stable frame. I personally have a free wheel that attaches to the front of my chair, and so it felt very similar to that ride, because the free wheel does the same thing. Instead of putting the weight on your front casters, it bounces it right in the middle. So it felt similar to the free wheel for me. The benefit of a free wheel is it attaches to your chair, so then you're still able to use your chair. You don't have to do a transfer. So some things to consider before you go and use it, but it definitely was a new experience and kind of fun to have that. I did test out some of its off-roading capabilities, and it was kind of fun to be able to travel over sticks and rocks and bumpy ground that I normally wouldn't have been able to get over. It does have some downsides. There definitely were some challenges. You do need a hand grip in order to hold on to the levers and push back and forth. It also doesn't have any dump in it, so you're sitting completely flat, whereas a lot of wheelchairs have a little bit of tilt to them. So you're kind of nestled down in the chair. So to sit completely flat doesn't give you a lot of wiggle room when you're going down bumpy surfaces. So that was a little bit challenging for me, just based on the function that I have. To brake, you pull back on the levers. So again, that was just a little bit of a learning curve. I kept saying, I need to stop, how do I stop? And it wasn't a natural reaction to pull back. So, learning curve, just like anything new. It did not have foot straps. And so again, this is something where, I think there's some room for improvement, as well as one of the challenges of having a generic wheelchair, whereas normally we would customize it, is that because there weren't any foot straps, if you don't have the ability to hold your feet on the foot plate, it would be pretty easy for them to slide off, and especially if you're going down bumpy terrain, that may be more likely to happen. I brought some of my own personal Velcro straps and tied them down, so that's something that may be helpful to know in advance. Also a suggestion that I provided after my first experience, that might be something they could invest in, and just have them there as an option if somebody needed that. The most exciting part of my my trip using the wheelchair is that because it doesn't go backwards, I did get to a steep point on the sidewalk where it was too steep to keep going up, and so normally my wheelchair would just, you just roll back down and start again, or get help getting a push up. But because the wheelchair doesn't go backwards, instead of going downhill, it just flipped over backwards. So it doesn't have anti-tip bars because it's designed to be all terrain, and so those could get caught up, in the terrain that you're going over. So that is an area. Hopefully there's some improvement there. I would definitely say if you're interested in trying it, it is good to go with a friend and have somebody maybe walking close behind you who can catch you if you need a grab. And again, there were a few times where I maybe got a little too adventurous and got stuck in a steep hole or a rut because I wanted to test out the limits of the chair, and maybe I think I found what the limits were. So I'm really excited that the parks is investing and looking for ways to make their trails and access more accessible. There's only so much they can do about the land and the trails. That's kind of part of getting out in nature and wildlife. So I appreciate their attempt to make it more accessible, but you're not going to find something that is going to work for everyone when you're talking about a specialized wheelchair. So I think it's a good start. I think for some people it will provide them an opportunity to experience nature differently or exercise differently, but it's certainly not going to be a like one size fits all. So I just encourage folks who are interested in maybe using it to contact them, kind of watch the video, see how it works, and then once you get there, kind of do that assessment of it. Does this look like it's going to be something safe and comfortable for me, and having a friend who won't mind spotting you, standing behind you, or there are handles on it, so that would be an option if you wouldn't have the ability to push it yourself. Somebody else could give you a lift with that.
That's terrific, Emily. I'm looking at a picture of it, and on all of the pictures they have foot straps. So I'm wondering if the park just didn't attach them, because on all of the pictures of the advertising they show foot straps.
It's definitely built for foot straps. It has the slots where they could be added. So I don't know if that was an extra added purchase, or they came in a box and they didn't know what they were. So that's a pretty easy fix. I had asked ahead of time because I'd been looking at the picture and I wasn't sure if they had that. They did have a cushion. It's not a super soft cushion, so depending on your needs there, that may be something you need to swap out for your own. So I think that's hopefully a kind of low-hanging fruit that they'd be able to make a change to that.
The other thing I see is that the front of the cushion is elevated up. So was that not the case on the one that you were on? I mean, it looks like it's got your feet more up in the air and you're sitting back.
I didn't notice that in the chair that I was using. I was looking on the website, and it looks like there are some ways you can customize it. So in one of the photos on the website, there is a customized backrest. I think they're typically designed for individuals to purchase, and then you would probably have more of the ability to customize, which is true for sport wheelchairs as well. If you're buying one for yourself, it's going to be built to your measurements. A lot of sports and recreation programs, just buy a lot of generic ones that will work for a large number of people, but they're not going to work as well for those individuals. So I think it's a start. I think it's an exciting opportunity to offer. I think there's just some little tweaks and improvements that they can make to hopefully make it an experience that's more accessible to a broader number of people.
Great. Well, thank you.
Emily,
One of the questions we have is that Susan put in the chat was, is there a cost to use the chair?
No.
Or is it just a service they offer?
Yeah, so that is part of the park's admission. So you pay your admission to the park, and then that is considered a tool to access the park.
Great, thank you. All right. So
Emily,
now we're going to hear from Gina. Who's going to talk
Emily,
about...
Sorry, I'm talking over you, Susan. I want to just ask really quick, Emily, thank you so much for doing that. Do you go to McKinney Falls in your regular chair
I
Do you
have
use
to
any of the
admit,
trails? Have you been to the park?
that was the first time I'd ever been to McKinney Falls, so I felt kind of like Boy mentioned of like, you know, not not going to Barton Springs. There's all these gems around Austin that for some reason you just never go. So that was finally what gave me the nudge. I did go with another friend who's a wheelchair user, and he was using a freewheel combined with a smart drive on his manual chair. And the trail that we went on, it was paved. It was still a little bumpy and got steep, you know, at times. It would have been difficult to do without a freewheel. I think it would have been possible, but maybe not a lot of fun. But with the freewheel, yeah, it would be totally doable. So lots of different options, you know, to navigate that.
Yeah, and I know with COVID right now, some of the park is closed. They do have a playground for kids and some other, I saw some nice accessible bathrooms. I think you may have said that they were closed at the time, but I know they do have that, and they do have a beautiful water area that is really hard to get to. But some picnic tables and things like that, which I think we'll be going back to verify, you know, what parts are accessible, be able to put that onto our website. So thank you, Susan. I am the ATXGO project coordinator. Susan mentioned that, and Celia went through what our project is. So what I wanted to do really quick was just actually share my screen and go through a survey that we've created. So the easiest way to get to our survey is through the ArtSpark TX website. And right here, we've got a Take the Park Access survey. This takes us to our ATXGO site, directly to our parks. Celia earlier mentioned a video that we did a while back about what would the ideal park look like. So this is where you would be able to view that video. Our survey, what we really want to do with this survey is get the information that exactly what Kristen and Darla were able to share. So if you weren't on this call, what you'll be able to do is go to this survey and let us know what the accessibility features you require for a really nice visit to a park. So we want to know if you live in Bastrop, Caldwell, or Travis County. These are the areas that we are really focusing on. And we have a long list of amenities and features. And then we have the opportunity for you to actually rank. What is your top 5, your first feature that you would list? And then if you don't see the feature listed that would be important to you to visit a park, I think Kristen mentioned that she really likes to go kayaking. I don't think we have that on the list, so you could add that information in here. And then what we would like to do is invite anyone who is interested in, like what Emily did, is visit a park and actually check out, is this an accessible feature that you know, someone can use, details about it. You can just put your email or phone number and we'll add you to a list of people that can be our park ambassadors and visit the park. So that is the quick survey that we're inviting everyone to access and fill out for us, and make sure at the end of the survey that you submit it. So what we're going to do with this information is we're going to take that and the 5 ranked features, the top 5, we're going to focus on those features when we go out and look at parks. So if everyone is really interested in trails, Darla mentioned she liked trails that have sidewalks, not really gravelly trails that are gonna ruin the chair. So if that is the most important feature for everyone who has filled out the survey, that's what we can focus on when we go and visit the different parks. We have a list of about 250 parks. So that's all of Travis, Bastrop, and Caldwell County. We really know a lot about the Travis parks, not so much about the outer areas, Caldwell and Bastrop. I think I heard a question. Was that Darla?
Yes, that was me. So it's just according to, because I already filled out the survey, but it's just according to what you get on the survey?
Well, that's what we will focus on, those top 5 features for now. Yes.
Right, but it's according to what you get on the survey for the answers, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why we invite as many people to fill out this survey, because we want to tailor the ATXGO Central Texas Parks Access Guide specifically to our community. So what you would like to see, that's what we'd like to put on the website, and that's what we will put our concentration on.
Okay. I was just curious to ask that question. I hope you don't mind me interrupting you for
No,
that
not
one
at all.
question.
Not at all. It was a good question.
It was a great question. That was a little quick overview of our survey. We'll put the link in the chat, and also that is available on the ArtSpark TX website for you to access.
And Darla, in response to your question, Darla, we thought because there's so many parks, we didn't want this database to be like pages and pages. So that's why we thought we would focus on the top 5. But I think, and Gina can tell me if I'm wrong, that we'll have a feedback place where if you go to a park and you want to send us an email about a particular feature at a park that was wonderful, you could tell us that, and then we could add that, because the fact that there are only 5 parks in Texas with these grit chairs, all-terrain chairs, we probably will put that as an extra added little feature on, well, McKinney Falls is the only park that's in our area. So we would put that on as a little added feature. So if you see something that is really accessible and wonderful and not in the top 5, then let us know so that we can add that as a little extra feature to that particular park.
And am I writing, hang on a minute, Darla, am I right in understanding that part of the where we would ask the ambassadors too is to kind of look at whether the parks do have the accessibility features that they say they have.
Right.
And right? So it's kind of like being able to, you can go to a park and it might list all these things, and when you get there, it's a bucket behind a shed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you never know what you're going to find. Darla, sorry, go ahead.
So here's the thing. I wanted to know if I can bring my camera and take a picture of that park, some pictures of what I don't see, and then make a note of what I don't see in the park. Would that help you guys out?
Absolutely.
Sounds like a great project.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, because I'm serious, because I have like 2 different cameras that I could just use here at the house. And Lauren, she was asking me, what do I think would help you guys out? So I didn't know what to say, and then I was like, well, you know what? I'm gonna just ask if I can just take my camera and then just do it from that point.
Yeah.
Good. I think
Yeah.
that we're open to receiving information in the way that's most accessible to each person. So for some people that might be written or just filling in, I'm assuming, will they have something to fill out or just report? Like, have we got that far yet?
We haven't gotten that far on how the ambassadors will give us the information. But yeah, it will be either a form to fill out, photos to upload. But also think about, you're collecting information that would be helpful to someone to plan a visit to the park. So Kristen said that she was really interested in, if she was going to barbecue, a picnic table that had a spot to pull the wheelchair in. So taking a picture of that and being able to review, like, yes, this does work for me. This works for this type of chair. It was a sidewalk, cement path leading up to that. Some of those details would be important, and they're important to her. They would be important to someone else.
Yeah.
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 So it's like a write down type of thing. write down your own answers type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't sorted it out yet. You're always planning
Okay.
ahead, Darla.
Oh, okay. I'm just thinking out loud.
I know.
And then
I like how you think.
And then one other reason that it's important that we actually have people visit the parks and verified is that a lot of times the weather can change what, a certain amenity is. I know with state parks, they have this issue, out on the trails, that there might be an accessible bridge across a certain area, but, flooding has washed it out. So we know that's why it's nice to actually have people go and visit and verify, and we'll put a date on that information.
Okay.
Do folks have any other questions or comments, or what happened to you in the park stories that you want to share?
I don't know if Kristen's still with us, but I'd love to hearing about Emily's story, hearing about these wheelchairs, all-terrain wheelchairs has piqued your interest, because I know you love wheelchair sports, and that your upper arms are really strong.
Yeah, it never occurred to me that some of the parks would have an all-terrain wheelchair. I think that's awesome. I know, well, we don't have beaches here, but I know, when I've gone to the beach in the past, they've always had a beach wheelchair I could use. But well, not here in Texas, in Florida. But yeah, I think that that's awesome. I'd like to try one of those all-terrain wheelchairs out sometime.
This is what it looks like.
Oh, I can't see.
Oh, okay.
I see it.
Yeah. So I think Corpus might have one of those balloon wheel beach access wheelchairs. I don't know where you'd find it, but we were in Corpus and saw somebody in one. So you're saying yes, Gina?
Yeah, so we had a meeting with the Texas Parks and Wildlife, and they had some on Mustang Island. Unfortunately, I think it was Hurricane Harvey wiped some of them out. So they're going to need to, get those back on. So they did have those available to use, but unfortunately, the location where they stored them, the hurricane wiped that off. So
yeah. Well, I want to thank.
I don't want to end on a sad note.
Well,
Whoops.
to end on a sad note.
I don't want to end.
Note. Yeah. They're sand wheelchairs, but not ducks like we have in Wisconsin, where you can go in and out of the water. And I have to say, in my imagination about these all-terrain wheelchairs, I was visualizing some all-terrain little motorized thing,
like those tank chairs.
Like a tank chair. I had this vision of it being all right, I'm off, like you were motocrossing in a wheelchair. So I guess that's just my imagination.
I went to
there's a number of different types of all-terrain wheelchairs. They're just built for different people and different types of terrain. So those do exist. I just imagine the price tag's probably a little bit higher.
Right. They would destroy the park.
Yeah, that's all we need, more vehicles running around over the park. What are you going to say, Kristen?
Oh, I was going to say, I go to this, or I used to go to this expo in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that Turning Point would put on, an adaptive sports expo. And I got an all-terrain wheelchair for all-terrain, but it reminded me of riding a lawnmower. And it was so tall. I couldn't transfer into it independently because it was so tall, and it was kind of cool to just ride in for a little bit, but I was thinking, oh, I don't want to take something like that to a park, especially not here. So.
Well, Emily put the link to the Go Grit chair in the chat box.
Okay.
It's a gogrit.us, GOGRIT.us, if you wanted to look it up later, Kristen.
Okay.
And they do have some pretty good videos, you know, that kind of show the feature and how it moves. But there's nothing like trying it yourself. Even after watching the video, it's, you know, a learning curve.
Yeah.
Well, the lessons were longer than I thought. When you were explaining it, Emily, I had the idea that you had these little bitty hand levers, but the levers are like 2 feet long, you know, so you're really, you know, they're much longer than I expected.
Yeah, and it's a different feel if you hold them at the top versus the bottom. You know, it's like gears on a bike, so it gives you more or less kind of power and control, which of course is totally different than a regular manual wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
So could you rev yourself up and then zoom along for a while?
I got going at decent speed going downhill, especially.
With an electrical chair, you do have a little bit of a different speed. I have a little bit of a different speed with my chair when I put my battery on the back, because it's half an electrical chair and half a manual. I use the manual part in the house and the battery part outside. But yeah, it's a little bit of a different type of thing, especially in the fan.
Yeah. Okay,
Wow.
Susan, it's up to you to round it up, right?
That's right. Wow, we have really like kept to our schedule. I'm so proud of us. Wow. So thank you, everyone. I learned lots tonight. I hope everyone else did too. And if you have any feedback about community conversations, or maybe you want to suggest some ideas, you can send that to outreach@artsparktx.org. Anyway, thank you all again. Go enjoy the parks, report back. And I know y'all taken the survey, but anyone that hasn't needs to do that, and that would be me, includes myself. Okay.
Well, and you tell all your friends, if you can help distribute the, you know, out to your friends and to get them to take the survey, that would be really nice and helpful.
Yeah, I've shared, I know for me, I've shared it on social, so I'll just keep doing that, especially if I see somebody says, oh, I just went to the park and did such and such. That's a perfect opportunity to ask them, hey, can you take this survey for us? Gina, I do have one last question. How long are we going to be having that survey available?
That is a good question. I think at least for the next 2 weeks minimum.
Okay.
I don't even know what day is it. We're almost in October.
It's Wednesday.
Yeah. So definitely through November.
Yeah, I think through the end of November. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, good to know. All right, super. All right, everybody.
I'd love to see some input from families, like from parents with kids and like kids on the spectrum and stuff like that. I think that would be, it's a kind of that physical accessibility is one thing, but it's other people who really don't get counted in the easy ADA accommodations.
So like, what if we go to the park? Here's another question I have real quick before we go. What if we go to the park and see a person with a disability or somebody walking along like a trail or something? Can we interview people, just ask them a couple of questions and stuff just to see what they think that needs to improve here in Austin with parks?
As long as they don't get mad at you because you're in it.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking outside of the box.
Yeah,
No.
I think so. And you can tell them about our website and ask them to take the survey
Right.
too.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks,
You
Donna.
can be our ATXGO Park Ambassador. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Great. All right, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you, Emily,
Cue
Kristen,
music.
Darla.
Bye.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
I appreciate it.
Thank you to our ArtSpark Texas funders, Texas Commission on the Arts, National Endowment for the Arts Creative Forces, St. David's Foundation, Cultural Arts City of Austin Economic Development, and Reeve Foundation Quality of Life Program.